Welcome to another Reaconteur video, and in today's video I will be going over everything stolen in Type Soul. This video will be covering every reference, non-canon addition, and everything made up by the Type Soul devs that is technically wrong or inaccurate to Bleach. Before we get into it, make sure to subscribe, since only about 20% of the people watching this video right now are actually subscribed. And also on Friday, I will be ranking your PC setups and bedrooms live on Twitch, so if you want to submit a video or a picture, videos are preferred, then join my Discord and go to the Google form in the announcements page, because that is where the Google form will be hosted, where you can show your PC setups and bedrooms. Also, the top prize for the best PC setup or bedroom is going to be 1,000 Robux, so submit it. There will also be a mystery prize for the worst bedroom or PC setup, so if you want to win that, strew garbage around your room. Now let's just get into it. First of all, I usually do mention this casually, but this is probably the biggest thing made up by the Type Soul devs, and it is partial resurrection. In Bleach, partial resurrection is technically a thing, but not in the way it exists in game, and Type Soul actually made it up before Bleach did out of pure coincidence, which is really funny. In Type Soul, partial resurrection is a skill set made of specialized reishi or reiatsu and sero or physical techniques, similar to a shikai moveset. In Bleach, the moves which exist in partial resurrection are simply moves that the Arancars who use them are always capable of doing in their base forms. Even Sero Metralleta is a move that Stark can just casually send out along with his dogs, and without the need of a power release or transformation. That makes them more similar to skill tree moves as something that can be trained than what they actually are in Type Soul. Now in Bleach, partial resurrection is a thing, but it is completely different. Grimmjow uses a partial release of his resurrection form to keep his claws out as a weapon that he can use freely without massive amounts of energy expenditure. It's completely different from what it's painted to be in the game. Along with partial resurrection, there are some other consistencies within just the Arrancar tree, like the Abi you have to do in order to obtain your partial resurrection, but this is just as made up as partial resurrection, so you can't really fault the dev team for it. They already made up a new power system, so they had to think up immediate obtainment method for it, and this is just the simplest thing they could probably think of for its obtainment. Now, I just want to talk about one specific partial resurrection, and something I might have said in one of my last videos. I said that the Empress of Light Resurrection was taken from the Calamity mod boss, the Empress of Light. However, the Empress of Light already exists in Terraria, but I don't think a lot of people realize the skill set taken for this game from that boss is the Calamity mod version of that boss, not the base form version of the Empress of Light. So while it is a base game boss, the moves taken weren't from the base game. They're taken from the modded version of that boss in the Calamity mod. Anyway, back to what we were talking about. Gran Rey Sero and Sero Oscuras are strange in their use cases. In Bleach, Sero Oscuras is only usable by the Espada, not by Vastacars, which wouldn't make sense anyway, since we know all the Espada can use Sero Oscuras, but not all the Espada were Vasto Lorde before they became an Arrancar. It's also the same as Gran Rey Sero in usage, because Gran Rey Sero requires an Espada to mix their blood into a Sero in order to infuse it with greater power. This is important for a few reasons. First of all, they can mix in as little as a drop of blood, which is what we've seen Grimmjow doing, meaning that 10% health in exchange to use it is way harsher than it would be in reality, but for balance reasons I won't nitpick that. Second of all, Gran Rey Sero only manifests in Type Soul as its grenade AoE variant. However, in Bleach it can be infused into any Sero to make it stronger, which means there are as many as Gran Rey Sero variants as there are regular Sero variants, since all you need to do is infuse blood into one to empower it. This also means it would make more sense if the devs just added blood infusion to any Sero by holding space or something, and then they could just add a cooldown to it and slightly readjust the values of the damage you take to the damage it does for each of the moves, which would actually be a pretty cool addition, because you could just empower your moves and it would be a little risk-reward thing. You miss your Sero, you get punished. You're gonna keep doing that, you keep getting punished, or you could just play it safe. So it would add, like, you know, some cool stuff that you can mix up with. Along with that, I thought I'd just mention most of the Seros are references to things that happen in the show. Like Sero Grab is a reference to the Sero Grab type move Grimmjow used to kill 2 of the Fracciones, which he does it twice. He does it once against Lupi, which is in episode 143, and another time to the Fraccione who was attacking Orihime, but I actually cannot find that episode because Old Bleach had so much filler. Regardless, most of the Seros are accurately based in the show, such as Sero Cornea, Sero Grab, and, you know, pretty much most of the other ones. The other paths are also taken from the show, except for Blade Sero, which I actually can't find anything about in Bleach, so this might just be made up, and if it isn't, please let me know when it's used, because I actually cannot find anything on Blade Sero. I know there are moves similar to it, such as the way Ichigo would use Getsuga Tensho, which means, yeah, Blade Sero is probably possible, and I mean, technically, if you want to go all the way up to 1000 Year Blood War Part 3, Ichigo kind of does something like a Blade Sero, but it's, you know, a little bit different, and I don't want to get into that because spoiler territory. Anyway, as for Blut, Vene, and Hiero, they are roughly as strong as each other. The only difference being that Hiero uses Reiatsu to toughen skin, while Blut Vene uses Reishi gathered from the air to harden blood vessels, which get used as armor above the skin and organs. So many words, you could have just said it makes it stronger. The strength of Blut Vene is also adjustable and can be trained, opposed to Hiero, which is hardened to its maximum at all the time and is instinctual and can't be improved as much. This means that Blut Vene can actually be potentially harder than Hiero since it's possible to train it, meaning realistically, Quincy should actually be the tankiest faction in the game, not Arrancars. Next update's gonna add like Hiero potency rerolls, which chooses how strong your hero is, and then Quincy's are gonna be able to train Blut Vene by getting hit and spamming you. It's just gonna make it a simulator. It's gonna be so much fun. No, I'm joking. Back to Quincy's though, Let's Steal, which is an outdated technique used before they discovered or invented the Volstern Ditch. This is a known fact. Even Kilgay says, oh, the Let's Steal is outdated, so why are you still using that trash, right? The problem with Let's Steal is that it offers a temporary buff. However, after using it, the Quincy who used it will either be temporarily or permanently disabled, making them unable to use their Quincy powers until they retrain their Reishi abilities. This means best case scenario in Bleach, after using Let's Steal, you will be significantly weaker after the fight. That is the best case scenario. You just lost half of your total power. Worst case scenario, you can just never fight again. In old type Soul, they handled this pretty well by making Let's Steal extremely powerful, capable of killing people in 2 to 5 shots, of which you had 10. And after expending all these shots, you would have all your Reishi moves, which is basically everything in your hotbar, on cooldown for 60 seconds. And it is now inaccurate, and, you know, back then it was much stronger, but it had, you know, the downside. Right now, it is not only inaccurate, but it's also much stronger than it has any right to be, which just shouldn't be a thing, because Let's Steal is supposed to be the 200-year-old predecessor to Volstern Ditch as a power release, but instead it's literally just a straight buff with no downsides, no counterplay, no thinking, no brain power involved. Just press K on your keyboard and now you're stronger, which is a little bit dumb. I think what they could have done was they could honestly buff Let's Steal and all of its variants, but then give it a little bit of a downside after it's done. So it's like, okay, if you're in a pinch, you pop your Let's Steal and you start fighting with it for the buff, but if the fight drags out for too long, you get debuffed. So you're supposed to use it to end fights quickly and play more aggressively. This could be a really good way to actually make it work, and I think it would be so cool if they did something like that. It would also make the variants not useless, because right now, like the boost variant and all that, like, does anyone even know what they do? Like, they've been so bad since they got nerfed. Like, they're basically useless now. So buff them to a point where they were stronger than they were before, and then just add some sort of downsides. Like, maybe after Let's is gone, you get, like, half as many debuffs as you did get buffs from Let's, and then that would be it. Now, next up is about Shrifts as a whole. There technically is no quest for it that Yuabaha makes the Quincy's do. He sees into the future to see who's strong and reassigns Shrifts for one of 26 letters depending on which ones are free or who's too weak to serve. You are either worthy of obtaining Shrift or you just aren't. Along with that, Shrifts are only given to Sternritters. Every Quincy we see fighting in the Soul Society is a Sternritter, versus the game where Sternritters are separate titles from CC that you can't even obtain anymore. But that isn't how it works in Bleach, so this is a little bit actually absolutely terribly wrong. Next up is the Shadows. We never see any actual usage of the Shadows other than the Keto move, which is a lot of wasted potential. We see them actively teleport using shadows, kind of like the Ultra Spy in Rogue Lineage, and we see them traverse through the shadows to travel actively, which is so dumb because they could have had some more mobility options or some sort of like teleport moves or something with shadows, but the devs really just underutilized this, even though it's kind of like a huge part of Bleach. Like, they literally hid cities inside of the shadows of the Soul Society. Is that not insane? But then all you're gonna do is do a little teleport into a slash. Like, come on, bro. And another thing that I always complain about in Bleach games, spoiler for 1000 Year Blood War Part 1, so skip ahead to the timestamp on screen now if you aren't up to there. But why is Kurosaki not a Quincy clan? Worst case, it should be available to both Quincy's and Soul Reapers. The name originates within the Quincy's and is still a Quincy name, which is because Ichigo is 1/3 Quincy, 1/3 Soul Reaper, 1/3 Hollow. Even if his training process is through Soul Reaper powers, he is still just as much Quincy and Hollow as he is Soul Reaper through his DNA. Which, this next bit isn't a Type Soul problem, but a Bleach problem as a whole. Why is Kurosaki a Quincy name? It has roots in Japanese origins, but every other Quincy name is German or just made up. Why is Kurosaki this one random Japanese outlier in the German faction with German names with one person having a Japanese name? I don't care if she was adopted into it, she would have gotten the adoptive name, so it doesn't make sense. It's stupid. And also the cybernetics box. added and popularized by Peroxide. Another thing, right? Stupid. Literally, like, when do we ever see any cyborgs other than, like, Sternritter K, who's not even a cyborg, he's just a straight-up robot, and then, like, Gremmy, who's just a brain in a jar, and he kind of puts cybernetics on himself when he uses the bombs to blow up on Kenpachi. There is no reason for cybernetics boxes to exist. Like, this isn't a thing in Bleach. It just isn't. There's, like, no actual use cases for cybernetics in Bleach. We have never really seen anything like that. And another thing, but Visionary is just lame as fuck. Like, oh my god, you guys literally could have done anything with it since it's imagination powers. And you guys still chose the lamest, most uninspired possible attacks from the show? Like, come on, that is so disappointing. Guns and meteors. Wow. We literally see Gremmy summon the body of space and then turn his 8 clones into bombs, and then he makes himself stronger than Iron, and then he makes himself infinitely stronger than Kenpachi, even though it didn't work because he's too dumb to imagine a stronger body for himself. You guys, for real, could have done anything you wanted with this, and this is still the least inspired Shrift in the entire game somehow. And nobody could even make a debate for, oh, I didn't see Gremmy do that in the show, because the powers are literally his imagination. Anything you think of happens, and you guys still made this so boring and lame. It is impressive how you can literally have a Shrift there and the devs are like, oh wow, we can do whatever we want with this. Like, actually, instead of adding non-canon stuff because we want to have fun, we could have fun with something that's already in Bleach and nobody's going to complain about it because they can't. And you guys still just chose the most boring moves that you could have and just didn't even bother with it. Like, come on, bro. Kyoka Sugetsu clones are probably, and more realistically, what the Gremmy Visionary Voltsternditch clone should have been. But, you know, it's just lame and it just sits there doing nothing in an idle stance. You guys got really lazy with this, and I hate you for it, because this could have been sick. Anyway, on to Soul Reapers and Visored. As a whole, the Visored quest makes a little bit of sense, but, you know, its obtainment is supposed to be different for everyone, so I guess you can say it's fine, because, you know, you're not going to have the same path as Ichigo. You're not Ichigo. And in reality, it's just about taming your inner hollow, so I cannot hate on them because the Visored quest wasn't like something that was done in Bleach. What I can hate them for is removing Sero paths for Visoreds. I don't even play Soul Reaper, and I think this doesn't make sense. We know that Seros aren't necessarily restricted like that, though, you know, as multiple hollows use multiple types of Seros, and also, spoiler to the 1000-Year Blood War Part 3, so if you aren't caught up and finished the manga, skip 10 seconds, Ichigo uses a Grand Ray Sero. This means there is no reason why Visored should be restricted to only Sero Oscuras, which, yes, Visored Sero is just Sero Oscuras, but, you know, white because it symbolizes the hollow within the Soul Reaper, who is the Visored. It's also a little bit weird because when they use, like, Seropaths, you used to be able to choose a Seropath in-game as a Visored. However, it was eventually removed and they were restricted to only using the Visored Sero, which is just so lame, because it would be kind of cool if you could get whatever of the Seropaths you wanted as a Visored. And then what they could have done to make it balanced, so, oh no, like, because people were obviously going to complain about that if they were to re-add it, they'd be like, oh, then what's the point of having Seropaths available for the Arankars, because now you might as well play Soul Reaper, which is already better than Arankar as it is right now because of Visored and stuff like that. Then just buff the Arankars and give them an extra Seropath like that. Because realistically, if it were like Bleach, you'd be able to use every Seropath as an Arankar. You'd be able to just grab all of them and it wouldn't matter. So just give the Arankars an extra one and then give the Soul Reapers the ability to keep their Seropath choosing, and then they also have Visored Sero, kind of like how Arankars have Sero Oscuras. And also, a little bit funny, but all the boss raid bosses are just developers' OCs, which I think is just, it's really funny, because it just makes me think the Type Soul devs are like a bunch of 30-year-old men trying to relive their glory days, role-playing as Ichigo when they were like 14 years old. It's really funny to think about like that. Anyway, now that we've covered everything in Type Soul that shouldn't be in Type Soul, let's cover everything stolen in Type Soul. The references. But I don't want to see any comments saying, oh, but that's a reference. Shut up. Shut up, bitch. Anyway, first of all and most obviously, Black Flash. This move is not only stolen from Jujutsu Kaisen, but it's also wrong. It applies anti-heal, but it should also apply anti-Reiatsu regen, since we know Black Flash stops the flow of cursed energy, and Reiatsu is the closest thing to cursed energy in Bleach and the Type Soul universe. It's also maximum usable 4 times in a row before going on cooldown, which, as we know, 4 isn't the absolute cap on Black Flash hits, proven by Yuji, who, small spoiler, but landed 8 in a row recently. And more than Black Flash, Thousand Depths is also stolen, and it's such a weird thing to reference. It's a reference to the Rogue Lineage Uber Oni move, Raging Demon, which is such a weird little reference because they're referencing something so obscure that most of the Type Soul community doesn't even know about. Like, this game averages like 30,000 players, while Rogue Lineage in its all-time peak probably wasn't half of that. So it's such a weird thing for the devs to reference because, you know, some of them were like CC players for Rogue Lineage and stuff before it came out publicly. So it's so weird that they would reference this. Like, I don't know why they're going to reference something so obscure that nobody's even going to get. Next is Serum W, which is maybe a reference to like 8 different things. It could just be a reference to the Flash, since it's supposed to be like multiversal travel and you're dragging someone through realities. It could be a reference to the A-Train, dragging that one guy really hard through a street until he died. And I've also heard that it's a Library of Ruina reference, which it probably is because the devs are weeb anime fans. But, you know, it's probably the Library of Arena reference. I just don't know what it is. Also, for those of you who commented that Thousand Deaths is a Street Fighter reference to Akuma, I got you, didn't I? Yeah, I know I did. Thank you for the interaction, buddy. Leave that comment down there. You deserve to be shamed for falling for the bait, so don't delete that comment. Anyway, Crazed Blitz is a Yakuza reference. The audio is also taken from, I think, Yakuza 0, but I'm not entirely sure about that because I haven't played the game. And the new Mother's Piety weapon is a reference to Moog from Elden Ring. It also has a 1 in 30 chance as a little Easter egg that upon landing a crit to say Neil and playing an audio voice line of Moog saying it from Elden Ring. The Yamato weapon is also taken from Sephiroth from Final Fantasy, and it's just the only unique and universal thing in the game, which is pretty cool. And I know I said this earlier, but just in case you skipped it, let me just say it one more time. The Empress of Light Resurrection is not taken from the Terraria version of the boss. All the moves are taken from the Calamity modded version of the boss because the boss is changed in Calamity. I know the boss isn't from Calamity, but the moves are from Calamity. So don't correct me when I'm right. Anyway, that's all. I missed anything, just let me know down below. On Friday, I'll be ranking your bedrooms and PC setups, so join my Discord to submit a video or picture for that. I love you all dearly, and goodbye.